Ladies and gentlemen, it's my great pleasure to present to you the recipient of this year's 2010 William O. Douglas Award. Please welcome VA Assistant Secretary L. Tammy Duckworth.
This is fine, yes, thank you. Yep. Thank you, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Wow. What an honor. Before I start, I want to say something to Mr. Farrell. I mentioned this to him earlier, and your body of work as an artist is indeed broad, and your work as an activist is well known among this company. But I have to tell you that almost every night in Iraq, during 2004, when every month was the deadliest month of the war, and when the first battle for Fallujah led into the second and the third battle for Fallujah, at the end of a long mission day, I would come back to my hooch, as we call it in the Army, and try to wind down after a day full of adrenaline of trying to keep myself and my crew alive. And I would put on an episode of MASH. And it was... Every night I watched one episode, and it was that little bit of humor and comfort that brought a little bit of sanity to the insanity I was participating in, even though I truly loved my country and was incredibly proud to serve and continue to serve. But those episodes helped me sleep every night. And later on, a year after I recovered from my injuries and my husband was deployed, he took those same CDs back, and he and his unit watched them every night before they would go out on those long convoys between Kuwait and Iraq. So, sir, thank you for my comfort. I have the great privilege of serving President Obama as part of his team that is working to do everything we can to work for veterans. And at my table earlier, we were talking about, it doesn't matter who the president is, but when you get that call from the president of the United States who says the best thing you can do for your country is whatever it is. It could be mopping floors or buffing floors. I learned to buff floors very well in the Army, so I could do that. You do it. And so I'm honored that you're giving me this award, but it's really my privilege to be able to do this work. Because my story is America's story. I grew up in Southeast Asia as an Amerasian child of a Vietnam veteran. I am the daughter of the American Revolution on my father's side, but also the daughter of a Thai immigrant on my mother's side. A woman who, until she was between the ages of 8 and 14, worked in hat factories, sewing hats piecemeal as a Thai laborer, as a child laborer with no rights and no benefits, bringing home what few bahts, as they say in Thailand, she could to keep her family going. And who now at 69 years old is, because she had to drop out of elementary school and never finish elementary school or high school, now studying for the GED because darn it, she can. And she's gonna do it. So, to go from that background and I attended public high school in Hawaii where it was a public school teacher who helped all of us kids who were on food stamps because he would find a way, Mr. for us to somehow stay after school and work on the yearbook or something else. And lo and behold, he would reach into his pocket and buy us Taco Bell or whatever, or Spam Musubi, for those of you who are from Hawaii, and feed us a couple nights a week out of a public school teacher's pocket and that meager salary, who then went, I went to public universities, and to get to where I am is the American story. It's not unique, though. We all have these stories. And that's why I put on the uniform of this great nation, was because I believe in what America stands for. And I believe that you do too. Because, in the Army, we have a concept of defending the perimeter. And on the day that I was shot down, my door gunner, a young man by the name of Kurt, I was told there's no press here, so I can tell this story. Kurt was a young, goofy kid. He was the lowest ranking member of our crew. I was the highest ranking member. And when he first came to our National Guard unit, Kurt, his first job that I gave him was to stencil my name on my footlocker, and I didn't trust him to do that without supervision. You can mess up Duckworth in interesting ways. One letter change in the D or the U, and all sorts of mischief can happen. But he was my door gunner. And the thing about Kurt was, the last thing that we said to him before we took off on our missions that morning was, Kurt, something bad happens to the aircraft. Your job as the door gunner is to take that 60 machine gun and head towards wherever the bad guys were, and you hold down your sector of the perimeter so that we can get everybody to safety. Never knowing that, as I was giving that order, that he was going to have to do that for me. And that day, when we were shot down, my entire crew was hurt. Kurt was shot in the butt. He's got the Forrest Gump wound. This is why. They've left the AK-47 round in his spinal column, in his tailbone, at the very top of his tailbone, because it was too dangerous to dig it out. But going into shock, bleeding profusely, scared out of his mind, he still took that 60 and went and held his place on the perimeter. And he stood there between where we were and about where the bad guys were, about 500 yards from where we were shot down, and he bought us the time that was needed to save my life and get me to safety. And I think of public counsel as doing that you've been standing that perimeter for this country, for the people who are voiceless, for the people who are powerless, for the people who don't have wealth. You've been standing that perimeter. You've been standing that perimeter defending my rights before I became a disabled member of the disability community. Had you not been there for all these years, I would not have the rights and privileges that I have. And my buddies would not have the rights and privileges that they do. And so I applaud you for what you do, because, sometimes when it's your turn, you just got to stand there and you got to say, you will not get through me. I will be here. I will defend these people. And that's what public counsel does. And I'm so proud of this award. I want to tell you the story of another young man that I met at Walter Reed. Another big goofy kid. I don't know why they're all big goofy kids, but that's how I think of them. The average age of the war wounded is of those serving in Iraq and Afghanistan is under 25. And in fact, the sad thing about what's happening with brain injury among our troops is that oftentimes when we bring in physicians to deal with traumatic brain injury, we have to bring in pediatric surgeons because the human brain is not mature until after you're 25. And so we are actually dealing with growing brains, and we will be dealing with the effects of brain injury for decades into the future. But Joe Dan, this young man, was a Navy corpsman. And those of you who've served in the service, and especially those of you who are former Marines, know what a Navy corpsman does. He is the one medic who's a sailor who, for whatever reason, wants to hang out with Marines. And so he gets assigned to a unit of Marines. Every Navy corpsman going back decades and many wars is always nicknamed Doc. And he's the guy that grabs the aid bag and runs to save his Marines. And Joe Dan was one of these kids, and he was in the fourth or fifth vehicle of a multi-vehicle convoy in Baghdad when the first two were hit, and he did what every Navy corpsman has ever done. He grabbed his aid bag. He didn't run for cover. He didn't run to try to return fire. He ran for his Marines who were in the kill zone, and he ran into the kill zone. Halfway up, he was hit by a rocket-propelled grenade, which knocked off his leg but did not explode. And those of you who've served, you know what he did next. Put a tourniquet on himself and continued to crawl forward into the kill zone, sat on the ground, took care of his Marines. And only after the last Marine was cared for did he give himself a shot of morphine that he was afraid to give himself until this time because he was afraid it would cloud his judgment as a medic. And then he passed out. And I had the great privilege of being there when then Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, General Peter Pace, wept as he pinned the Bronze Star with the V device of valor on this young man. But he did what you're doing, you know? It's the tough jobs. It's not the ones where you get the accolades. It's not the ones where you get the dollars. It's not the ones where you get the glamour. It's the tough jobs, and you got to run into the fight. Because when it's something that you value and something that means more to you than life itself, that's where you belong. For me, the America that I love, the America that I was willing to die for, and I am continuing to be willing to die for, is not an America that leaves anybody behind. It is not an America that says it's okay to have homeless veterans. It is an America, in the word of President Obama, who said that any time a veteran sleeps on the streets that he defended, we are all dishonored. It is an America that says we will be here defending this perimeter for those who can't speak for themselves. And I was going to make a glib joke when I walked on stage about my artificial legs. One of them, I don't know if you noticed, has stars and stripes all over it, and the other one has it's in camouflage. And I was going to joke and say that it's because I thought I might have to change planes in Arizona. I wanted to have my credentials with me. But the America that I love is not an America that says we leave anyone behind. I'm sorry you can't keep up with the herd. We're leaving you to the hyenas. I'm sorry that you don't have the privileges and the great fortune to be born into a good family and have no disabilities and have no challenges in your life. Too bad. Go fend for yourself. That's not the America that I love. This country is strong. We do have the greatest military on the face of the earth, and I'm so proud of my veteran brothers and sisters. But we're not strong because of that military. We're not strong because of our tanks and our guns and our helicopters. I mean, I like the helicopters, but that's not why we're strong. We're strong because of us, of the people. We're strong because every time I climbed out of my helicopter, whether it was in Egypt or Guyana or Iraq, and that crew crawled out of that aircraft, and we had a Latino crew chief, an African-American door gunner, a female Asian as the highest-ranking officer and pilot in the front, and my good friend Dan, who saved my life that day, the pilot in command of the aircraft, who actually did the hard work of landing the aircraft and carrying me to safety. To have that diversity and that multiplicity of backgrounds, that's the America that I defended. And it's the America that stands up for other people's rights, even when they can't speak for themselves. So I thank you for standing that perimeter, and I don't say that lightly, because I've only been in the Army 18 and a half years, and many of you have been practicing law a lot longer than that. And you've been there on that perimeter saying, you're not getting through me. I'm here. I'm here to defend this country and the values that I believe in. Thank you. Tonight, there are young, brave American men and women strapping on body armor right now. They are doing their final checks on their M16s and the final walk around their Humvees and their helicopters, getting ready to go out on a mission to walk down a mountain pass in Kandahar or drive a Humvee down the roads in Iraq. And they need to know that you're on that perimeter, because, believe it or not, they know almost real time what's happening here at home. And they're keeping tabs on what's going on. And they don't need to know that they will not be cared for when they come home. That's why the president has given us the largest increase in VA's budget in 30 years. That's why Secretary Shinseki says VA will no longer be an adversarial relationship with our veterans, but we will be advocates. But we need you. On average, a veteran who has an advocate and files a claim gets approximately $3,000 to $5,000 more a year in his disability benefits than one who does not have an advocate. We need you to help us serve our veterans. We can't do it on our own. So thank you for your service to our nation. And God bless those young boys and girls right now going into harm's way. And always, God bless the United States of America. Thank you.